Hello students, hope you are doing fine. Now here we'll be discussing chapter 2 of biology, which is biological classification. Just to remind you people that we are dealing with unit 1, diversity in the living world. Initially we have covered chapter 1, which is the living world, and here today we'll be dealing with chapter 2, biological classification. Later on, the next chapter would be plant kingdom and finally animal kingdom. So these all four chapters are part of unit 1, which is diversity in the living world. All right. So let's get started with chapter 2, biological classification. First of all, let us understand the various classification systems. Firstly, Aristotle was the scientist who initially gave the system of classification, wherein he used simple morphological characters. Morphology means the observable characters, okay, which you can observe. So he used such characters to distinguish between variety of plants. So he classified plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. So trees, they are very tall. Shrubs are small and the herbs are the smallest plants. So on the basis of the characteristics which he could able to see, on that basis he characterized plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. Later on, he also divided animals into two groups, and the basis was the presence of red blood cells or not. So two categories he made. One was animals with red blood and another those who didn't have red blood. So this is kind of a very simple and vague type of classification. So later on, two kingdom classification was given by Carolus Linnaeus. So he was the scientist who later on gave nomenclature also. So the two kingdom classification which he gave was he divided the organisms into plants and animal. So he categorized the organisms into two broad groups called as kingdom, and those broad groups were plants and animals. So a large number of organisms didn't fall into either category, means neither they were plants nor they were animals. So can you think of certain organisms? Yes, microorganisms, fungus, algae. Okay, so that is why new classification system came into existence. Let us look at the classification system which is widely accepted, and that is five kingdom classification. So as the name suggests, the classification divides the organisms into five broad groups or five kingdoms. It was given by the scientist R. H. Whitaker. The names of scientists is very important. You should remember that which scientist gave which type of classification. So it was given by Whitaker, and the five kingdoms or five broad groups are Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. So we will learn about all these kingdoms in detail in this chapter. So Plantae and Animalia is clear because these two kingdoms were given by Carolus Linnaeus also. So Plantae includes plants, Animalia includes animals, Monera mainly includes bacteria. Protista, it includes unicellular organisms. And the last group is fungi, okay, like mushrooms, yeast. So let us study all these kingdoms, all these broad groups in detail. So before getting into details, let us see that what was the main criteria for giving the five kingdom classification. Criteria means what were the main features which were used to divide the organisms into five broad groups. First was cell structure, means whether the organism is made of single cell, unicellular, or made up of many cells, multicellular. Then second was thallus organization, means what type of body organization the organism is having, whether it is a eukaryote or it is a prokaryote. I hope you remember from the lower classes that eukaryotes have a well-defined nucleus, but prokaryotes do not have a well-defined nucleus. Next is mode of reproduction, means how the organisms carry out the process of reproduction, whether it is asexual where single parent is involved or sexual reproduction where two parents are involved. Next is mode of nutrition, means how they obtain their food. It can be autotrophic, means they are making, synthesizing their own food, or heterotrophic, means they are dependent on another source, other organisms for their food. And last but not the least is phylogenetic relationship. Phylogenetic means the evolutionary relationship, the ancestry, how we have evolved. So, all these features were taken into consideration by R.H. Whitaker before he categorized organisms into five major groups or five kingdoms. Now, why this type of kingdom is widely accepted? There are major points which tell that this is the most used classification system. Firstly, the earlier classification systems, they didn't distinguish between autotrophic plants and heterotrophic fungus. Means they were put in the same category because fungus also has cell wall and plants also have cell wall. So they were placed in the same category, but we cannot place into same category. You can see over here, mode of nutrition is also important, as well as the thallus organization, right? So plants, what is the mode of organization, mode of nutrition? That is autotrophic, and fungus are heterotrophic. Moreover, cell wall of plant is made up of cellulose, and the cell wall of fungus is made up of chitin. Okay, so now they are placed in the different groups. Secondly, in the previous classifications, bacteria, fungi, mosses, the flowering plants, which are angiosperms, and non-flowering plants, which are gymnosperms, they were placed together under plants. But it is not the case. Now we know that bacteria is unicellular and it is a prokaryote. Okay, so it will be placed in Monera, and organisms which are unicellular eukaryotes, they will be placed under Protista. All right, so that is why in this five kingdom, R.H. Whitaker categorized the bacteria, the protists, which are like amoeba, in separate groups. Next, the kingdom Protista also brought together organisms such as Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, which were earlier placed with algae. They are now under Protista kingdom, which is placed under organisms such as Paramecium and amoeba. And in earlier classifications, Paramecium and amoeba were placed under animals. Okay, so now R.H. Whitaker, what he did, he put all the unicellular organisms which are eukaryotes. Okay, unicellular eukaryotes he put into kingdom Protista. So Chlamydomonas, Chlorella, Paramecium and amoeba, now they are together placed under Protista. Unlike in earlier classification, what happened? Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, they were placed in algae, and Paramecium and amoeba were placed under animals. But this is not the case, so it has been clear that unicellular eukaryotes will be placed in Protista. So such type of changes in classification, can it happen in future? Yes, definitely. If when our understanding of the characteristics of individual organisms and how their ancestry has evolved over time, so the changes in classification will occur in future also. So let us just briefly look into how R.H. Whitaker categorized organisms into five kingdoms. Okay, one criteria is whether the organism is prokaryote or a eukaryote. So you can look over here that in prokaryotes only Monera, that is bacteria, are placed. In eukaryotes again two divisions are there. One is unicellular, other is multicellular. Okay, in unicellular means it is single celled organism. Multicellular means it is multiple cells, many cells are present. So unicellular eukaryote is Protista. Protista includes protozoans like amoeba and Paramecium. Then in multicellular further we can have two categories: organisms with cell wall and organisms without cell wall. So organisms without cell wall are animals, so they are put in Animalia, kingdom Animalia. Organisms with cell wall can be placed again into further two categories. One, who are phototrophic, means they can synthesize their own food, that is plants. Heterotrophic means they are dependent on other sources, or they cannot make their own food, so that they are dependent on other organisms, so that is fungi. Next, this table has been taken from your NCERT book only. It briefly explains the different characteristics of the five kingdoms. So this is a very important slide. Look into it, listen to it very, very carefully. See, in the table you can see on one side characters are given, and on the other side five kingdoms are placed, right? So Monera, again I am telling you, it includes bacteria. Protista, it includes protozoans. Fungi, you know, fungus. Plantae, it includes plants. And Animalia includes animals. So cell type, let us look whether it is a prokaryote or eukaryote. So only Monera is prokaryote, rest are eukaryotes. Easy to remember that only the kingdom Monera, which includes bacteria, are prokaryotes. Rest all the kingdoms, all the members of the kingdoms are eukaryote. Sorry, Monera is prokaryote and rest is eukaryote. Then coming to the type of cell wall, in Monera it is mainly made up of polysaccharides and amino acids. In Protista, some organisms have cell wall. In fungi, the cell wall is made up of chitin. In plants, it is made up of cellulose, and animals, they lack cell wall. Let us look at nuclear membrane. Now, can you tell if Monera is prokaryote, then the nuclear membrane will be absent because there is no well-defined nucleus in prokaryotes. Rest all the members of the kingdoms would be having nuclear membrane. Next, coming to body organization, means whether it is unicellular, multicellular, or whether tissues are present or not. So in Monera, it is cellular level organization, unicellular. Protista also unicellular. Then from fungi till Animalia, they are multicellular. Okay, and animals have proper organ systems also, unlike fungi and planting. In fungus, except for yeast, which is unicellular, rest all the organisms are multicellular. Then coming to mode of nutrition, you can see from here very clearly that monerans, they can be autotrophic also and heterotrophic also. Protista, again, they can be autotrophic and heterotrophic. Fungi are heterotrophic and they are saprophytes. So what are saprophytes? Organisms which feed on dead and decayed matter. Plants, obviously, they are autotrophic, and animals, they are heterotrophic, generally holozoic, means they take large chunks of food. So this is just a brief summary of what we are going to study in detail. So every kingdom we are going to study in detail. So these are the major characteristics. So just to sum up, monerans, only Monera group is prokaryote, rest are eukaryotes. Regarding cell wall, animals lack cell wall. In protists, only some protists have cell wall. Rest, Monera has cell wall. The fungal cell wall is made up of chitin. The plant cell wall is made up of cellulose. Regarding nuclear membrane, the Monera, because it is prokaryote, so nuclear membrane will be absent, and rest are eukaryotes, so it will be present. Coming to body organization, kingdom Monera and Protista, the members are unicellular, rest are multicellular. Coming to mode of nutrition, except for plants, plants are autotrophic, okay, and animals would be heterotrophic. Again, fungi are heterotrophic. Monera and Protista, both the groups, they can be autotrophic also and heterotrophic also. So we'll study everything in detail. Let us begin with kingdom Monera. So Monera, again, always remember the organisms which are included in Monera are bacteria. So in this slide, you can see a diagram of bacteria. So it is a typical bacterial cell wherein you can see there is DNA. Okay. It is not enclosed by any membrane. So nuclear membrane is absent. Freely present ribosomes are there. Outside there is a cell wall also, and there is a capsule which gives it additional protection. Plasma membrane is also there. For the movement, a flagella is also present, and these are pilus. These generally help in the reproduction of a bacterial cell. So what are the main characteristics? In Monera, bacteria are present, and these are the most abundant microbes and ubiquitous. Ubiquitous means you tell the habitat, and in that habitat they are present. So they are present everywhere. Also, they are present in extreme habitats like hot springs, in desert where extreme snow is there, and in deep oceans. And some of them also live as parasites. Parasites means they are living on the body of some other organism. Now this is important that on the basis of their shape, there can be 4 categories of bacteria. One is round shape, you can see over here, which is called as cocci or coccus. Like if any bacterial name you see and coccus is written, means it is having round shape. Bacilla, it is having a rod shape. Okay, bacillus. So wherever you see the term bacillus, means it is rod shaped. And can you see these oval type of structures over here? So bacillus group can form spores also. Spores, what are spores? They help the organism to stay in unfavorable conditions. Okay, next is spirilla. You can see spirillum bacterium. So wherever spirillum bacterium is present, it will be a spiral shaped, and it also has flagella for movement at the end. Then there are vibrio. So vibrio are comma shaped bacteria. So you can see the shape over here. So these are the different categories you can see of bacteria of different shapes. Next, the most extensive metabolic diversity you can see in this group. So what do we mean by metabolic diversity? Diversity means variety, and metabolic means all the chemical reactions which are taking place inside an organism. So there are diverse reactions. So how we can say it is diverse? See, some bacteria are autotrophic. Autotrophic, you know, it means that they synthesize their own food. And vast majority is heterotrophic. Heterotrophic is they are dependent on other organisms for food. Even in autotrophs, there are 2 further categories. One is they can be photosynthetic autotrophs like plants have chlorophyll and they synthesize their own food. So similarly, some bacteria have plant-like chlorophyll and they can produce their own food. Second category is chemosynthetic autotrophs. So chemo, synthetic, means chemicals are used over here to synthesize the food. Okay, chemicals like nitrates, ammonia, the nitrogen fixing bacteria. Okay, so these will be placed in chemosynthetic autotrophs. So in this slide, you can clearly see that the bacterial group can be divided into 2 categories, eubacteria and archaebacteria. So from the term itself, if we just split it, eubacteria. Eu means it is advanced, okay, having an advanced body organization. Archaebacteria. Archae means primitive, old. Old bacteria as in we are just talking about its body complexity. Eubacteria are more complex, and archaebacteria, their body organization is primitive. So let us look at it one by one. Firstly, archaebacteria. They can live in mostly harsh habitats. So harsh habitats means the places where you cannot imagine a human being to live. These organisms can reside over there also, like extreme salty areas. So the organisms which are staying in harsh salt environment, those are called as halophiles. There are certain organisms which can also live in hot springs. So those are called as thermoacidophiles. So from the word thermo, you can relate that it can relate to hot environment. Okay. Next is marshy areas. Marshy areas means where mostly water and wet areas. So those are methanogens. So you can categorize the organisms into 3: halophiles, which stay in extreme salty areas; thermoacidophiles, which stay in hot springs; and methanogens, which stay in marshy areas. So have you ever wondered that why this archaebacteria can survive in extreme conditions? It is just because it has a different cell wall structure. Okay, and the cell wall is so tough, so protective in nature that they can stay in very much harsh conditions. So now looking into methanogens, methanogens as the term is suggesting, methanogens. So it forms methane, all right, and this methane can be used to produce biogas also. So how? Just listen to it carefully. The gut of ruminants like cows and buffaloes, they have this type of bacteria. So in the gut, in the stomach of ruminants, it is already a natural microflora in the body, so it will produce methane. Now when the dung is obtained from cows and buffaloes, that is used for the biogas production. So see the importance in our daily life of these bacteria. Next, coming to eubacteria, which is having a complex body organization. It has a rigid cell wall, and if it is motile, as you have seen in this diagram, they have a flagellum. All right. So when we talk about its mode of nutrition, it is photosynthetic autotroph, or it can be heterotroph. So let us see the photosynthetic autotrophs first. These can be called as cyanobacteria. Cyano is blue-green color. Okay, so cyanobacteria, or we can call it blue-green algae. And it has chlorophyll A. It is a type of chlorophyll which is similar to plants. It can be unicellular, or it can be colonial, means it can live in colonies, or it can be a filament structure like this. And habitat, if we talk about, they are freshwater, they can be in marine like oceans, and terrestrial on land. And they are characterized by a protective sheath which is gelatinous sheath. It is a very moist sheath which gives it protection. Generally in polluted water bodies, these cyanobacteria, they form blooms. Blooms means they grow extensively on the surface of water body. And also they are important because they can fix atmospheric nitrogen. Then this was about phototrophic autotrophs. Let us see how the chemosynthetic autotrophs take the food. So they use inorganic substances like nitrates, ammonia, which they use to release energy. So generally the nitrogen cycle, if you remember, in nitrogen cycle, these bacteria are present which convert the nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, into ammonia, nitrate and nitrites. Okay, so they are helping in the recycle of the nutrients in the nitrogen cycle. Next are heterotrophic bacteria. So the majority of them are decomposers present in the soil, and they can be very useful as in making curd from milk, production of antibiotics and nitrogen fixation. Then there can be certain pathogens also. Pathogens are disease-causing organisms. So they can cause diseases in crops, in farm animals, in humans. Like some diseases are listed here: cholera, tetanus, typhoid, citrus canker. These are the diseases which are caused by bacteria. So they can be helpful also for us, and also they cause diseases. So here you can see the diagram of a filamentous blue-green algae, again taken from your NCERT book, Nostoc. So just see, it is filamentous in nature, and it has that gelatinous or mucilaginous sheath over here. And it also has a very peculiar cell which is called as heterocyst. What heterocyst does? It helps in the nitrogen fixation. Okay, these are the specialized cells which will help them to fix the atmospheric nitrogen. Now let us talk about reproduction, how the bacteria reproduces. First process is fission. Fission means that splitting up of a single cell into two. So here you can see that a cell is going to divide, their nuclear material is going to divide into two. Then finally the cytoplasm is going to divide, and you can see the two cells. Then in unfavorable conditions, they can also form spore. Remember bacillus? So this is a microscopic slide of a bacillus only. Here you can see a rod-shaped bacterium, and at the end there is a oval-shaped spore. So spores generally, they, you can say, are formed whenever the bacterium is in resting stage. It cannot reproduce. So in unfavorable condition, it will form spore. Whenever the favorable condition will return, then it is going to reproduce. Another mode of reproduction is sexual reproduction. Now, how this can happen in bacterium? Actually, here what is done, or sometimes in nature it happens, that the DNA, here you can see, this is one bacterial cell and this is another bacterial cell. This is the DNA. Okay, so the DNA of one cell is going to transfer to the other cell. So that is how a sexual, because sexual reproduction involves two parents, so here the DNA of this is being transferred and then the sexual reproduction can take place. So lastly, let us see about mycoplasmas. These are also a type of bacterium, but they completely lack cell wall. So they have been categorized as separate also by some scientists, because they do not have any cell wall, and they are the smallest anaerobic living organisms known till now. So the size is 0.2 to 0.3 micrometer. You know what is a micrometer? It is 10 raised to the power minus 6 meters. So very small, tiny organisms these are. And these can be pathogenic to animals and plants. So here a structure of mycoplasma is being shown, that it is having a plasma membrane, but also it has a DNA ribosome, but it is not having cell wall. So if anybody asks that name a group of bacterium or a type of organism that is lacking cell wall and is the smallest known organisms, they are mycoplasmas. So that's it for now. And in the next slide, we will be learning about the next kingdom. So just revise these concepts. Thank you for listening.